The boarding announcement echoed through the airport for the third time, but the little girl didn't react at all. She just kept coloring, carefully, patiently, inside the lines of a blue paper airplane, unaware that the world around her was moving, rushing, calling names she could not hear. That was when the CEO realized something was wrong. Elena Hart stood near gate 47, phone pressed to her ear, finalizing a merger worth hundreds of millions. Her tailored coat, her sharp posture, the quiet authority in her voice, everything about her said control. Yet her eyes kept drifting back to her daughter, Lily, sitting on the cold airport floor with her backpack hugged to her chest. "Lily," Elena mouthed, waving slightly. No response. Elena felt that familiar ache, the one she carried since the day the doctors told her that Lily would never hear her mother's voice. Lily was 8, deaf since birth, brilliant, gentle, expressive in ways words never could be. Elena had learned sign language late, too late, she often thought, after years of assistants, tutors, and therapists filling the gaps she herself had neglected while building an empire. The call ended. Elena slipped her phone into her bag and knelt beside her daughter, signing quickly, a little clumsily. "We board soon. Are you tired?" Lily smiled and signed back. "I like airports. People look like stories." Elena smiled, but her chest tightened. She had missed so many of Lily's stories. A sudden delay announcement rippled through the waiting area. Groans followed. A man across the aisle stood up sharply, frustration written all over his face, a small boy tugging at his jacket. And then, something happened that made Elena freeze. The man knelt down in front of Lily. Elena's breath caught. Before she could stand, before she could speak, the stranger raised his hands, and began to sign. Perfectly, fluently, gently. "Hi," he signed with a warm smile. "That's a beautiful airplane. Where is it flying?" Lily's eyes lit up. She straightened, hands moving excitedly as she signed back, her fingers dancing in the air. "Everywhere," she replied. "It doesn't like staying in one place." Elena stood there, motionless. Because in 8 years, she had never seen a stranger speak to her daughter like that. Not once. The man glanced up then, finally noticing Elena. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Elena Hart, CEO, negotiator, woman who never froze under pressure, felt something unfamiliar rise in her chest. Vulnerability. The man stood. "I hope you don't mind," he said softly. "I'm Daniel." Elena swallowed. You speak sign language." Daniel nodded. "My son is deaf." The boy stepped forward shyly, holding a worn toy plane. Lily smiled at him instantly, signing hello. And just like that, 2 children began a conversation without sound, while the adults stood silent, watching something rare and fragile unfold. They sat together after that. Not because they planned to, but because it felt natural. Daniel was a single father. He worked night shifts as a baggage handler. He'd learned sign language when his son, Noah, was diagnosed at 2. Learned it fast. Learned it fully. Quit a better paying job because it didn't allow time for therapy appointments. "I figured," he said simply, "if the world wasn't built for my kid, I'd at least make sure home was." Elena listened, each word landing heavier than the last. She thought of the birthdays she missed. The board meetings she chose over school plays. The assistants who spoke for her. The delay stretched into hours. Flights canceled. Tension everywhere. But at gate 47, something else grew instead. Connection. Lily leaned against Elena, sleepy now. Daniel signed a short story to both children, about a plane that was afraid to fly until it realized the sky was the only place it truly belonged. Elena watched her daughter laugh silently, fully alive in a world Elena had only visited. And for the first time in years, Elena wondered, what if success had cost her the most important language of all? She didn't know it yet, but this chance meeting wasn't just a delay. It was a turning point. 3 months later, Elena Hart stood in front of a boardroom filled with executives, yet her hands were shaking. Not because the deal on the table could reshape the company, but because her daughter was about to walk into the room. The same boardroom where emotions were never shown. Where weakness was a liability. The doors opened. Lily stepped in, holding Elena's hand. And then, Elena began to sign. Slowly, confidently, publicly. "This is my daughter," she signed. "And today, she is teaching us how to listen." The room went silent. After that day at the airport, Elena had made a decision that shocked everyone around her, including herself. She stepped back. Not from leadership, but from distance. She restructured her schedule, turned down projects, learned sign language every night until her fingers ached. She invited Daniel to coffee, then to dinner, then to meetings where she realized how many families like his were invisible to companies like hers. Daniel never asked for help. But Elena offered partnership. She launched an accessibility initiative across her corporation, sign language training, inclusive hiring, adaptive communication policies. Not as charity, as strategy. Because talent, she learned, does not disappear just because the world refuses to listen. Daniel was hired as a consultant, then as a director, not because of pity, but because of insight born from lived experience. The children became inseparable, and Elena became something she never expected to be. Present. One evening, Lily signed to her mother, "You're different now." Elena smiled sadly. Better or worse? Lily thought, then signed, quieter. "But I hear you more." The final scene came a year later, back at an airport. Different gate, different flight, same kind of waiting. This time, Elena sat on the floor beside Lily. Daniel sat across from them, Noah asleep on his shoulder. No phones, no rush, just hands moving, stories shared, silence filled with meaning. As the boarding call appeared on the screen, Lily signed something that made Elena's eyes fill with tears. "I'm not afraid of the sky anymore," Lily signed. "Because I know you can find me there." Elena hugged her tightly. The plane took off, and somewhere between the clouds and the ground below, Elena finally understood. True leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. Sometimes, it's about learning a language the world forgot to value.